Welcome, everyone, to our new episode. We are really going to dive deep today. And sometimes we get in those places where we're like, God, where are you? I want more of you. I need more of you. But then that comes the question like, what are we willing to give to have more of Him? Because there is an exchange. There's always an exchange. There's a give and a take. There's a cause and effect. God created the world that way. You will reap what you sow. There's always, in essence, almost like a twin. There's a this, and a that, and a that, and a this. So the question today we really want to dive into is like, what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to let go of? What are you willing to surrender to have more of God? Because at the end of the day, that missing thing that we always feel like something's missing, it's God. And we need more of Him. But in order to have more of Him, we have to have less of us. We have to have less of the worldly views. We have to have less of the triggers. We have to have less of the jealousy and less of judgment and less of unforgiveness. We have to start letting all of that go in order to have more of Him. He cannot go where there is sin, which means that we got to let go of sin. What are those fleshly desires that get in our way of having more of Him? It's like I can't remember the verse, but like we need to die to self in order for Him to give us life. He knocks at the door. We have to answer. We can't just be like, I want you, God. I want you, God. And meanwhile, He's knocking and we're like, I hear that, but I'm not going to open that. Or I don't want to give up that. Or I really like watching these movies of witchcraft and all these other things that I don't want to stop watching. And I'm, oh, okay. We make choices every day. But when it comes to having more of God and wanting to understand even your purpose more, or even understanding yourself more, you must go to the one who created you, the creator. And if you want more of Him, you have to make room for Him somewhere. It's like if you have a closet that's completely overflowing with stuff and you're asking God, I want more. He's like, well, where? Where will I fit? Are you willing to make room for Him to fit in you, around you, in your relationships, maybe even your work? Maybe you're crying out to Him, you're wanting something different, but you're not willing to make any moves to change it. You're not applying for a different job. You're not willing to go take a certification course or to even listen to what God has to say. Maybe you have this burning desire deep inside of you, but you allow other people or even yourself or fear to keep you from stepping into who God is calling you to be. You can't have more of God when you're sitting in fear because He is not fear. He's not in fear. You can't have more of God if you're not willing to get on the path because He has plans to prosper you. If you're not prospering, you got to start asking yourself, well, wait a minute. Are my plans in contradiction to what God's plans are for me? He can't prosper you if you're over there. Like he can prosper you on 3rd Street, but you're on 1st Street, wondering why is nothing working? Well, because you're not willing to align yourself with what God has planned for you. And that can be in all there's so many ways we can go with this. There's so many things in this world. But do we want this world or do we want God? Do we want forgiveness or unforgiveness? Do we want to really feel His presence? Because we can't feel His presence if we refuse to let go of the sin. If the sin becomes greater than our promise keeper or the promise maker, even, He keeps all of His promises. Do we keep our promises? Are we willing to let go? Are we willing to surrender? I guess that's the question today. Like, what are you willing to say no to? And what are you willing to say yes to? And even what does that look like for you? Because there's so many ways we can go with this. There's so many.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the first thing that kind of came to my mind as you were talking, Lori, is maybe you're in that place where, maybe you've forgotten like what maybe you've forgotten who God is and what He brings to your life. Because I think sometimes when we get so distracted by the world and our capacity becomes so limited to the presence of God, um so limited from the presence of God, meaning like you don't have the capacity for His presence because you're so filled with materials, with the mundane tasks of this life, and earthside, and your work and gossip and drama, or whatever it is, thinking about that vacation. You're so filled with the world that your capacity for God is so limited. And I think maybe you're in that place where you've forgotten what God really brings to your soul. You've forgotten what true nourishment and nurture feels like. And you're wondering why you feel empty, why you feel exhausted, why you feel distant. And so it might be a good time to reignite that fire and just abide with the Lord. Sit and journal in quiet and peace, or get outside and connect with nature, and just allow God to pour into you and say, God, what is it that I have to let go of? What is it that I have to make? I have to make room for you somewhere to infiltrate and to touch my soul and speak to my heart and transform me in a way, because right now I feel stagnant. And I think that's the place we can get in sometimes when we get so filled with the world and lose touch with God, is we become stagnant. And I hate that place. I hate feeling stagnant spiritually. And so it's like, Lord, I need to keep moving like a river. Like, you say that you are living water, and I should be flowing like a river when I'm, one with you, and I'm abiding with you day in and day out. Like, I shouldn't be like a pond and just stagnant and getting gunk in me. And, I think of mold and, oh, sorry, there's a baby on my chest. So she has something to say about that too. But, anyways, that's the first thing that came to my mind is, we need to let go of those things like Lori said, and make room for God to come in and tell us, like, and to reignite that fire, so that we're walking more closely with him and we're feeling more of his abundance, because that's what a life with God looks like, is abundance. It looks, you're seeing these fruits just manifest in your life. And so if you're feeling empty, you're feeling drained, exhausted, confused, weary, tired, all these things, that's not of God. So identify, what is God? Who is God? What does he bring to my life? What does a life walking with God bring to me? The fruit that it brings. And then what are the things that are not of God? And what is that bringing to my life? And really take time to journal about that, and let him tell you what it is you need to let go of, and surrender to him, so that he can come fill those places. He can come meet those needs for you.
Mm. Yeah. And when you were talking, I really, really, God brought this back around, and I'm like, yeah, this is so true, because I know so many people that are running around. They're like, I want to be married, and I'm going to chase after boy after boy after boy, or girl after girl after girl, because I want it. But that's when but when you do that, you're actually saying to God, I don't trust you. I don't trust you to bring me my future spouse. I have to go do this myself. But in essence, as you're chasing after those things, then you've taken your eyes off of the promise maker. He may have promised you years ago, I'm bringing you this most amazing spouse. But after a few years, you're like, he's not doing it, so I got to do it. And then God gets out of the way, because remember, we've talked about that. Only one person can have their hands on the steering wheel at a time. And so in your need and your pursuit to chase after the spouse that you think that you need to have right now, you're in essence keeping yourself, first of all, from becoming the spouse that God had created you to become. So you're literally pushing away, and you're keeping it from happening. You are making it take longer. And I can speak on that, because I did that. I myself did that. And I kept crying to God. I'm like, what is going on? He's like, well, you keep trying to take over. And so when you take over, I step back. And then for a while there, it was because it's not about waiting, it's about preparing. You have to prepare it. Becoming one with someone takes preparation, especially in a marriage covenant, because God is in that covenant. He's the only one who knows who your covenant spouse is. He's the only one who can take you there. He's the only one who can get you ready. So if you're one of those out there who's like, I'm never going to get married, this is never going to happen. First of all, stop saying that, because you receive what you believe. So if you truly don't believe he's coming, God's like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to keep him over here. And he's wondering, where's my person? she's not willing to wait, or she's not believing in you right now. Ooh, that really doesn't feel good. I would like to not be on the other side, having God tell me, they don't believe that I'm going to bring you right now. So we're in a holding pattern. That doesn't feel good. And I did that. I did that for like I was like 7 years. I just thought, okay, God's doing it. So I'm just going to wait. I didn't pursue my purpose. I didn't really pursue anything because I'm like, I'm just sitting here waiting. God made a promise. I'm just going to wait. And it wasn't until I was like, God, what's happening? He's like, exactly nothing. What are you doing? What are you doing to prepare? Are you allowing me in? Are you getting stuff out? God doesn't call us to drag baggage into different situations. He wants to heal us so that we can have godly relationships, so we can have the marriage covenant, so we can have um, those deep, abiding friendships. Actually, I can sit here and think about that now. If I would have met Taylor, I don't know, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have been in the right headspace to be a very good friend because I wasn't nice to myself. How could I be nice to someone else? So even in essence of that preparation of, being prepared for God's work, or to be prepared for the marriage covenant, or even to be prepared for godly friendships, we have to be prepared. We have to love ourselves enough in order to know the difference between a godly friendship and a non and a not. Because it's easy to, because we're made in God's image, and He wants to commune with us. So therefore, we have that same desire to commune with other people. We really got to make sure they're the right people. So if we're not willing to get rid of those people, that they may be toxic, they may bring us down, they may keep us from our purpose because we're listening to them, and they don't believe in themselves, so they sure don't believe in you, and they'll fill you with fear and doubt. So if you're not willing to let those kind of people out of your life, God can't bring you the right friendships. He can't bring you the godly relationships. He can't bring you more of Him if you're willing to hold on to all this other stuff that isn't serving you at all. So what are you willing to let go of? That's really the question today. What are you willing to let go of to have more of God? To be able to get to that marriage covenant marriage, to be able to have those godly friendships that lift you up so that you really appreciate them. I appreciate Taylor. I appreciate our good friend Shay because we are there for each other. We don't put up with the shenanigans. We're honest. I'm like, oh, you know, I won't bring it all in here, but I honor that. I love having those that I know that I can cry and be completely authentically myself. And first of all, they love me first and then direct me second, because that's what God does. He loves us first and then He directs us second. So are we willing to love Him first?
Mm. Yeah, I just thought about, what are you willing to give up so you can gain? And what you gain might not look like what you think it's going to look like, supposed to look like. And so I think that's something important to keep in mind. Like, what we're gaining holds eternal value. It might not be flashy and pretty, earth side, in the world's opinion and view, but you are gaining something that holds eternal value when you bite your tongue and choose to not say the things you really want to say in impulse. Whenever you choose to forgive someone who really did you wrong, or, something traumatic that happened, and you choose to forgive and move forward, you might not see that reward of an apology, or, a beautiful rekindled relationship here on earth, but your decision to do that and let go and move forward still holds eternal value, and you will be rewarded for that in heaven, and you'll see it manifest in your life, just in your walk with God, just to know that God is pleased with you. And I think that's something so profound that we lose sight of, is, you know, pleasing the Lord. Like, remembering whenever we die and see Him face to face one day, I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant, not because, I did all these things perfect and did all these things right for Him. And I just want to hear accolades from God. Like, it's not about that. But, pleasing your Father is so profound because, it means you're close with Him. You're close with Him, you're abiding with Him, you're hearing Him, you're in tune with Him. And that's the only way we can please Him, is a deepened faith and to be abiding with him. It's not that I'm going around getting all these accolades because, oh, I built a church and I helped out the homeless and, I forgave when, I should have forgiven and I know the 10 Commandments. Like, it's not those things that necessarily please God, but our obedience and our closeness with him is what pleases him. And it's a gift to us, and I think we have to see it as a mutual benefit whenever we are obedient to God and we are close with him. We are surrendering the fleshly desires for those things of the spirit. And so I want to share the scripture. It says, give and you will receive. It's Luke 6:38. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap. And so the more that we're willing to surrender to God and allow him to refine and burn out and get rid of, the more room we're making for him, the more room we're making for the fruits of the spirit. And so then we're filled with all the peace, all the joy, all the love, all the abundance, all the things we want in life, we will be filled with internally. And it says that it's going to make room for more, running over, meaning it's not just going to affect you, it's going to affect those around you. So keep that in mind too. The more that you're willing to surrender to Christ, the more of an impact you're going to make for his kingdom. And I think that's super powerful to know that, because that's what he's called us to do as believers, is to almost be a domino effect and pour into one another. Well, we can't do that without him, and we can't do that in our flesh and the desires of the flesh, because our fleshly desire is typically selfish. So it's not going to really make the eternal impact that God has in mind. So I just think that's really, really powerful. So the more that we're willing to give and give up, the more we're willing to sacrifice. And I think that's the perfect word to describe it. It's sacrifice. Like, if we're not living a sacrificed life, then honestly, we're not really living. And I think that's exactly what Paul stated when he said, to die is gain, right? Isn't that something? I can't
Mhm.
remember the
Yeah.
exact verse, but it is like, to die to your flesh is a gain to you. And so just what Jesus did, he came here on mission, and there was so much, obviously, purpose in his sacrifice. And if Jesus wouldn't have sacrificed in the way that he did, like, what would him being born on earth and going through his mission with all the believers have really done if he didn't rise again after dying? Like, we wouldn't have any hope. We wouldn't have any hope. So his sacrifice for us was vital. It was important. And so your sacrifice means something. So I think that's something we have to remember, because there's so many times when we don't want to sacrifice. It's like, I'd rather just sit in my comfort of what I know, what I've always done, because I just don't really want to go through that. Like, that's painful. That's icky. That's boring. That's, whatever it is, fill in the blank for you. Um, so yeah, just remember that sacrifice equates to abundant life. It really does.
Mm. Yeah, and it's funny because when you're reading that verse, like God really just showed me how far we've walked together, because it was, I don't know how many years now, 12, 13, I don't know. But I had a falling out with some friends. Um, God has started asking me to choose differently. I gave up running around on the weekends and I would sit home alone and stuff. I could look at it. Some things were taken from me. Um, some things I sacrificed and let go of and chose to go through the healing. And because I did that, because I allowed God to move me and I got into his plans for my life, That's when Taylor came into my life. That's when my friendships started to change. And I'm seeing it more and more now, more and more amazing, godly friendships. It's starting to be an outpouring. I'm starting to see that because I gave things up. I sacrificed, running around on the weekends to spend with God and to heal through trauma and abuse that I've been through. So these are all things that I want to inspire you with. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. What matters is what you're choosing today. What matters is that God has a plan bigger than you can ever imagine. If you just get into alignment with his will. And if you get caught up and going like, well, I don't know, I'm not sure about this alignment thing. Well, Taylor's an alignment coach. So I'm putting her on the spot. She's there to help guide you, to help you see how everything in your life can be aligned with God's plan for you. And then that's where you find your prosperity and your hope and your future is in him. But you have to be willing to get into alignment, and to get into alignment, you gotta let go of things. So we've talked about this too. If you want to get up from the valley up to the mountaintop, you got to get rid of all that weight. There's things you've got to let go of. There's healing that has to happen because God doesn't want us hobbling up the hill with this baggage. He wants us leaping for joy, dancing our way up, inspired the entire way, loved the entire way. Because when we're inspired and in love, we inspire and we love. The more we fill ourselves of God, the more we can give of him. And that's really what we're all called to do. We're called to love each other the way that God loves us. We're called to bring his children home. We're called to impact his kingdom, not this world, his kingdom. So what are you willing to let go of so that you can be that impact? Because he put a promise inside of you. Every single person that has ever taken a breath of life had God's purpose. He's got hope in you. His faith is in you. He trusts you. Do you trust him? Do you trust yourself? Do you trust the promise he put inside of you? Even if you've been waiting years, even if it's coming up on 15 years that he made a promise to you, are you still willing to hold on? Are you still willing to cling to him and know, okay, God, I'm not seeing it on this side, but I know in the spirit, you're moving mountains for me. What do you believe? Remember, you have to believe it to receive it. What do you believe? What do you want?
Amen. That's good. Well, I hope that you guys had some awesome takeaways from this episode. And I know that I did. And so we look forward to having you on our next episode. Thanks so much for tuning in.